Well, so, you know, one thing you may know about Kate and I, and this really comes more from her than from me, is that we're bargain hunters. And like I said, this comes much more from her and her good Scots-Irish family than it does for me. But I saw the value of bargain hunting really early in our relationship. And I reached a point where I really embraced this chance to look for the deal or the bargain or the good opportunity. And you see those all over the place. And it's interesting because you see them around. And you know, having been involved with the computers and the internet and all that, pretty much since it started to catch on, I've seen the rise of all these scams, right? The Nigerian prince who wants you to wire him $50,000. Anybody ever see that one? Or there's so many. Many of them I can't even talk about in church, really. But in there are things which aren't exactly too good to be true. The Publishers Clearinghouse, how many of you got one of these at some point? Yeah. Did you know they put them online too now? You get them in a little web ad. It's not a scam. It's kind of interesting. It's not a scam. They actually do have a winner who really does win the big prize. Why are they giving away money to people for free? Well, it's real simple. You send in an address, right? You send in your address or now your email, and you respond. And I don't know, how many of you get junk mail? How many of you throw it all away? Well, what Publishers Clearinghouse gets is a list of names and addresses and emails of people who not only get junk mail, but actually open it and send it back. That's a valuable commodity, if you think about it. It means that all the other companies that send you junk mail can figure out who's actually going to open it. And so Publishers Clearinghouse has run a profitable business, giving people money, and then selling the names of the people who are willing to take a shot at it to other companies that send out junk mail. And there's nothing wrong with this. They tell you what they're doing. It's not a secret. If you're the kind of person who fills one of those out, you might not even mind getting more junk mail. But it's not really about giving money away for free. And you find this with more and more of our bargains and our deals and those things. There's always a catch. And all these services that we enjoy always come with terms and conditions that apply. You ever see that phrase, terms and conditions apply? Many of you I doubt you do, know what this is. I told somebody before church, I can look around the room and say that half of you at least are bound legally by what's on that little slide. What that is are the terms and conditions that you agree to when you sign up for Facebook. One of the ones in there says, we have the right to change these terms and conditions at any time. And if you pay attention to the news, every so often they throw something in there, like we're going to let any company that's willing to pay us a fee look at your information. And then there's an uproar, and they say, oh, sorry, we'll take it back, right? But they're always slipping things in there. There was a little joke that said there's a little thing that's been going around saying that they just changed I'll say, first of all, there's always a place you can go and click to get off of it, if you know about it, which you never do. And this service that we've all gotten used to, not all of us, to be fair, the service that so many people are using for free, of course it's a profit-making business, and there's something in it for the people who are running it. One of the ideas of kind of our whole society is that people who are going out to try to make money can also do good at the same time. And it doesn't always work that way, of course, but there are very successful companies which succeed doing good things, helping people, But again, they wouldn't be doing it if there was nothing in it for them. So we have this balance. People who do good things, people who give money away, expecting something in return. That's kind of the basis, almost, of our whole society. Investment. When you invest money, you give something to somebody, you expect something in return. And Jesus doesn't say it's wrong to give money, to lend, expecting something in return. He just says everybody does it. He doesn't say it's bad to make an investment, but he says don't expect to get some kind of credit because you lend expecting something back. Your reward for lending and getting something back is that you got something back, right? So Facebook, for example, doesn't get Mark Zuckerberg, I guess, the other stockholders or shareholders. They don't get credit for creating this business. What they get is a whole lot of money. Google, their corporate motto is "Don't be evil." That's really useful, but again, their "Don't be evil" doesn't contradict their other principle, which is stay in business. So in our world, we have a lot of people giving us stuff, trying to get something back in return. And Jesus does say, if you're a Christian, do things differently. And this is where it gets interesting, because it reminds us that in the world Jesus lived in, most people were not Christian. First of all, nobody was a Christian at this very moment when Jesus is talking to his disciples. Christian is still up in the future. But Jesus was talking to a group of people within the nation, within the world. And the first preachers, the people who we read about in the Bible, they were talking to a group of people who saw themselves as a little small group within this huge society. Nobody imagined the idea of a country that might call itself a Christian nation. And so Paul and Jesus and the people who preached have no problem saying, the world and our country, our society works this way. It's okay that society works this way, but if you're a Christian, you need to do things a little differently. I'm going to mention this need to be different from the world that we're living in and the society that we're living is a reason that our church bulletin board has said pray for unpopularity for a month. We're not doing things. We're not called to do things in the way that everybody does. We're supposed to look different. And as I mentioned last week, talking about consumerism, and what would happen if we all actually stopped buying stuff we didn't afford. Our whole society is challenged when we start doing things differently from the way anybody else does. And there will be pushback. When you stand out from the crowd, even if you're standing out in the crowd because you're following Jesus, maybe especially if you're standing out from the crowd, going against the flow, because you're trying to accomplish something good, you will face resistance. You will lose some popularity. That's the price of doing what's right instead of what people want you to do. It's the price of following God, your conscience, against the rules that everybody else is telling you to follow. So we are called to do some things that are not the norm. And this whole lending and borrowing thing is one of them. Jesus says, just give it away. Just give it away. If people want something, give it away and don't ask for it back. Now that's hard. It's almost strange. And why does Jesus say that? Well, part of it is because our attitude about stuff. Jesus had a lot to say about wealth, about things, about how we deal with our possessions. And what he says is, Jesus says, if someone asks for your goods, give them away, right? Jesus didn't say if someone asks you for the meal you're going to give to your child, give it away. I think it is fair to say that, and Jesus, sometimes you have to interpret. I guess that's why you let me get up here and talk. Jesus talked about receiving our daily bread from God. And I think it's pretty clear that there is a room to say, I need this. I think of an example. We had this ice storm come in, and Kate and I, Kate, had said that before the winter started, we would need a kerosene heater, just in case. So way back in December, I went and bought a kerosene heater. And we had it in a box. And when the ice storm came, we opened it up and figured out how to make it go, we think. And there it was. Well, we got a call, I don't know, the second day, saying from somebody who said they're out of power and they need a kerosene heater. And Kate and I talked about it. She said, if our power goes out, our pipes are going to freeze because we're in this old, pretty drafty house. And she said, for the cost of what would happen to our pipes, we could buy an awful lot of kerosene heaters. And she said, we really need that kerosene heater. I agree. We needed it. The risk of not having it would have been a huge amount of damage. And a huge amount it would eat into our ability to help other people in all sorts of other ways. So he said, no, we need this. You have to think sometimes about need versus it's nice to have, right? I think one of the things about lending is that it lets us try to split the difference. We don't want to give it away, but we could lend it for a while, right? It lets you kind of get around the whole issue of whether you need it or not. And I think it's pretty clear. Jesus says, if you need it, you need it. But if you truly need something, then you can't give it away in the first place because you need it, right? If someone asked us for the kerosene heater today, no problem, right? We don't need it now. We needed it then, not today. And if you don't actually need it, then why is it important to get it back in the first place? And I think that even deeper than that, beyond the question of how we hang on to our stuff, is that lending something lets us hang on to a very important piece. It lets us hang on to control. And I want to demonstrate this. Now, one of the teenagers, and you can guess it wasn't one of the boys, thought these were really cool. I want to demonstrate, is anybody interested in a lime green umbrella? Or would anybody be willing to pretend to be for the sake of this illustration? Okay. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to give you this umbrella. Okay. Now I've just given you the umbrella. So whose umbrella is it now? Yes. Because I gave it to you, right? Now we're going to try something else. Does anybody else? We got one more. Would somebody raise their hand to humor me? Thank you. Sally's probably still on camera, so I'm going to do it over here. Okay, I'm going to lend you this umbrella. Okay. Now, I just lent you that umbrella, so whose umbrella is it?
Well, it's still yours. But,
yeah.
But God says.
Yeah.
You still don't want it back.
Right. And I'll tell you, in this case, it's true. I really don't want it back. But leaving that aside, especially since Debbie gave them to me before church, we won't even get into that. When you go outside and see it's raining, let's say the three of us go outside and see it's raining, and I realize I don't have a third lime green umbrella. That's Sarah's umbrella. That's too bad for me. I still have control over that one. That's mine. It's still mine. What we do when we lend, we might give the thing away, but we find ways to hang on to the control of the thing that we have. And it gets even trickier when you start talking about money. I remember a few years ago when I didn't have a car. I was living in Ann Arbor, didn't really need one. I borrowed somebody's car. And as I was driving it, the car died. So so I had to get it towed to a mechanic and looked at it. And talking about it, it was pretty straightforward. The guy who owned the car said, well, if it's something that happened because of how you drove it, you pay for it. If it's something that happened just because, I'll pay for it. And it luckily wasn't something that I had caused. When you're dealing with stuff, it's at least pretty easy to figure out where it is. If I lend you the umbrella and you lose it, you know the umbrella. Has anybody ever damaged or lost something that they borrowed? Yeah. And you know how you feel about it, right? I mean, it's like there's anxiety, there's stress, you want to replace it. Even if the person says, oh, don't worry about it, you still, yeah. When somebody gives you something, you break it, maybe you feel bad, but it's not the same because the control isn't there. And talking about the control, see, when you give control, when you give an item away, but keep control of it, you're also keeping control of the person who received it. There's an old story that like everybody has to read in 7th or 8th grade called The Necklace. It's about a family who borrows this very expensive diamond necklace and loses it and spends years and years, changes their whole family, impoverishes themselves trying to pay for it back, only to find out it was a fake. Very funny. The control is what you maintain when you lend. And when you're talking about money, it's even trickier because it's a lot harder to figure out when the money's lost or gone. You know, if you lend somebody an umbrella, either they have it or they don't have it. If you lend someone $1,000, which $1,000 is that? And if you want to illustrate the difference between borrowing and lending, I can make it really simple. Think about how you feel about this. I was given $1 million. Now let's try this on for size. I just borrowed $1 million. Yeah. Okay, there's a whole control thing that goes on. And Jesus tells us over and over again that a major part of what we're supposed to do is to let go of control of stuff, of other people, of our lives. There's a little piece in here that's really interesting about why this is so important. Why are we supposed to do good? Because then, on top of everything else, Jesus doesn't just say lend. He doesn't say give your money away to the people who you like. Because in truth, if you lend to people who are good, people who are productive, you still get something back. You might not get the money back, but you do get back that satisfaction of knowing that they're doing it, that they're going to be grateful, that good things are going to happen, or you still get back. Maybe not the money, but other things. Jesus says the reason you give to people who aren't going to give it back to you and aren't even necessarily going to be grateful for what you have to give them is so that you can be like God. You can be children of your Father in heaven. Now, we all have different experiences with fathers. So maybe father doesn't make you feel warm and fuzzy. It works for me. My dad and I get along well. But the point is that ideal father, the goal is the person who is providing and taking care of us, of their kids. And what Jesus says is God is doing stuff for people who are mean and ungrateful and wicked all the time. Every person here who is alive, every person everywhere who's alive is alive because God has given them life. And look at all the terrible things people do with their lives. Look at all the ways that people hurt each other and are mean and nasty. Look at the people who make all this money, even if you go beyond life, and use it for selfish purposes. And God keeps on doing it. God is giving to people who are ungrateful and wicked and don't deserve it. And we are in the image of God. We were created to be like God. And that means we too are called to be like God and to give to people whether or not they're going to pay us back. You know, God doesn't get paid back really at all. But at least, you know, you can say so many people say, God has blessed me and I feel like I need to do good with what I've been given. We all have that feeling. Well, maybe not all of us. That's kind of the point, isn't it? Some of us don't have that feeling. Kate likes to watch, Kate and I like to watch these reality TV shows about spoiled people. Anybody see You're Cut Off? I was hoping. It's these young heiresses whose families finally say, you're going to have to learn some responsibility and do some things. And so they all come with their Gucci bag, millions, and moved into a 2-bedroom house and told, you got to learn to do for yourself. You know, what's interesting about that is that all those people who are so easy, you look at them and they stand up and these women say things like, well, I'm glad I'm not bad like all those other people there. They stand up and say, yeah, it's pretty much all about me. My life is all about everybody doing what I want, and I'm okay with that. You know, and it's kind of fun to watch these people who are so much worse than you, right? But of course what happens as they dig into the show is that they find out that they're not okay with having everybody do for them. That they're actually really miserable people. And that as they give up, find a job, start doing things, they feel better about themselves. And they can admit that they're happier. You know, when they have people come back from the earlier, this is season 2, season 1 of You're Cut Off, saying, I love my life so much more now that everybody isn't doing for me and I'm not self-centered anymore. I'm so much happier. Which gets us to the very last part of what Jesus had to say. Don't judge. First of all, don't judge when you see someone who is ungrateful and wicked. Don't judge when you look around and see somebody who's just not nice. Because there's always more going on than we can see. And there's always a side of unhappiness, of misery, of sadness, who knows, tragedy, we don't know. And when we judge, we cut off the chance to see who that person really is. But beyond that, don't judge, because this is a great secret. God gives good things to the ungrateful and the wicked. That's all of us, isn't it? Is any of us grateful all the time? Are any of us good all the time? Some of us do pretty good often, but none of us is good all the time. And that's why when Jesus says don't judge, he says don't judge because all those mean people are actually miserable. He says don't judge because the standard you use is a standard that will be applied to you. If you demand perfection, you're going to have to live up to perfection. And you can't do that. And so many of us, I think, who judge, do it because we do hold ourselves up to that perfect standard. The people I know who are most judgmental, really deep down are judgmental of themselves too, whether they admit it or not. And so in letting go of that judgment, we let go of what we started with. We let go of our debt. We let go of our sense of obligation. And we remember that what God gave us was not a loan. God gave us life. God gave us family, a community, food on the table, a roof over our heads most of the time, the presence of the Holy Spirit with us, His Son to die and rise again for us. None of it was a loan. None of it was meant to be paid back. It was a free gift. And so, just like someone who receives a gift that they can't pay back, you might be grateful. You might want to do good, and be nice to the person and pass that gift on, pay it forward. But we also have to know we didn't get the gift because we can or should pay it back. And so today, our invitation is to accept that freedom, the freedom that comes from knowing that what God gave us wasn't meant to be paid back, and to help give other people the freedom to accept what we have without demanding anything in return. And as we start to stand, we're going to sing Have Thine Own Way. And I invite anyone who wants to become part of that, whether you want to come and be baptized, become a part of this little community that we call Central Christian, or just dedicate yourself in a new way toward following and giving and receiving what God has to give. Let's all stand together. But if you do, come on down the aisle. As we stand together, let's sing Have Thine Own Way.